All right, I'd like to welcome everybody to Artist Talk for our current exhibition, Interaction. We have three of the featured artists with us today, and I'd just like to say a few words about them as we get started. Sherry is an interdisciplinary teacher based in New York. She teaches at the City College of New York. She holds a BA in art and music at Macalester College, as well as an MFA from Minneapolis College of Art and Design. Her work combines digital and analog materials and often invites an interdisciplinary conversation related to teaching and learning. She's also an instructor. We have Qiuwen Li, is a graphic designer and design professor living and working in Santa Clara, California. Born in China, she received her BFA in graphic design from St. Cloud State University and received her MFA in visual studies and graphic design from Minneapolis College of Art and Design. Dan is from the Chicagoland area, where they received their Bachelor of Fine Arts at Northern Illinois University and an MFA from Texas A&M University, Corpus Christi. They are currently an instructor at College of the Sequoias and also at California State Stanislaus. And the other artist that can't join us today is Shelby Roberts. She is an assistant professor of photography at Oklahoma State. I welcome our artists and the studio students that are joining us today with this talk, and we'll let each of the artists speak for a period of time. If you have questions for the specific artist that just spoke, feel free to ask that question, and then we'll also open it up for questions at the end of the talk. So we'll start with Sherry.
All right, hi everyone. Nice to meet all of you, though I cannot see many of you clearly. So I'm gonna present something that's less in the category of artist talk, but just like about the process of how you can make the object that's at the gallery, just so that you can engage it with a little bit more. So can you see it? So I'm going to just present you multiple pop-up book mechanics to show you how I put this together. And if you have time, you should definitely make one that's available at a gallery. So the first technique I'm going to show you is called parallelogram. So how does it look like? It looks like two sides that are exactly the same width. The height can be different. And first, you put them up like this to measure the width here, and then you will be able to glue them to the spots. So how can we apply this? Something like this. So if you make a miso soup, you can pop the tofu up like this. Anything parallel, you can put them. So this is an example of how you can apply it in a smaller scale, but you're more than welcome to make it a larger scale. Okay, next is going to be a variation of the same parallelogram, but slightly different. How is it different? So let's take a look. So in this particular mechanism, we're gonna make parallelogram, but we're going to make two of them. How is this working? So first you make one that's flipped to one side, and you make another one that's paralleling, like exactly symmetrical to the center line. And then you will find something like this. That's the opposite direction. Once you fold the paper, you can put another sheet of paper folded inward inside. And those two parallelogram creates the support to lift something from the original base of the paper or the book, aka the white piece of paper right here. And always press really hard when you put double-sided tape there to secure the paper. It looks like this. So where can we apply this? Here's a mapo tofu. If you can see the edges, it is lifted with the same mechanism of what we did just now with the yellow sheet of paper. Even more variation of the first parallelogram. What can we do? So this is something more unique that you open the page halfway. You first create a parallelogram that is slightly lifted from the middle of the paper. And always remember to press really hard. So now you get this first. And then you add another thing on top, which is going to be shown in red paper. Like this. And now it goes to the other side of the paper. And now if you open it, you can have two things on top of each other, but go in different directions. This is one of the most common greeting cards we can see. And the beauty of this is that this line doesn't have to be parallel. It can be any shapes, because what's working here is this item that's paralleled and this part that's parallel to the paper. Okay, I'm going to show you a totally different new technique right now. So this is called rotating disc. Unlike the other one, it doesn't function on its own. It needs a base like this that's folded inside. And by attaching quote unquote arms, which is like the red paper, you can make things move when you are folding and unfolding the paper. So how does it work? You'll be able to see in a second. So once you put them up there like this, you see how some of them are moving to different directions. That's based upon whichever angle, whichever triangle that you glue it to. How does it work when we actually make pop-up books? Like this. So the jalapeno attached to the bean sprout can be moved when you open and unfold the pieces of brisket when you open the door in this bowl of pho. Let's get even more advanced with the rotating disc. If you add more items to extend the arms to a new direction, you can see even more dramatic effects. When you open, you see how much the blue pieces of squares are moving when you open and close the sheet of paper. So where can we apply this? It's not easy to see here, but here's an arm hidden behind the top sheet of meat. So the top sheet of meat is covering the arm so that you can only see the jalapeno rotating when you open this piece of pork chop. Okay, so now we're going to switch to something even more different. It's called a pull tab. How does this work? So first of all, you need to insert it to the back and pull it up to the front. And if you add a piece of paper to it, how it looks like it's gonna be like this. This is the side view of how it looks like. And this is the front view of how it looks like. So it's completely flipping it left and right. So I made a piece of kimchi where the kimchi is moving, flapping back and forth by using the same mechanism. Okay, here's the last one I'm going to introduce you to. It's called the spiral. So if you put a spiral into it and tape one side of it to one side, and if you tape the other side of the spiral to the other side of paper, it is going to look like this. And it's very explosive. And to make it even more interest, you can add even more details onto the spiral to make it more explosive. So you can first make the sauce coming to the dumpling from the disc, but also the spiral doesn't have to be circular. It can also be square, as long as it's a spiral form that one side is glued to one side of the fold and the other side is glued to the other side of the fold. So here, this is the one that is available at the gallery. You're welcome to interact with it. So the tofu is the parallelogram that we explore with different dishes. That's parallelogram, and this side is parallel to the other one. And the jalapeno is rotating when you open it based on the mechanism we just discussed. And the radish or the carrots are moving when you open it. That's the pull tab we just did with the kimchi. And then at the end, let's add some sauce to the banh mi. And the cilantro is for decoration. So you're welcome to put it on the surface, or you can add it on top of the spiral. So cilantro is a metaphor for anything extra you can add onto the book without destroying or modifying the original form that makes anything move. So I recorded a video of me making the banh mi. So if you're more like a video person, I'm going to walk you through how to make this book. So first you need to fold the bread. And then the first you're gonna add a cucumber. So you glue one side of it to one side of the bread and the other side of it to the other side of the bread. And always press as hard as you can because those are dramatic movements for something as thin as paper. So we just got our first part done. And then we're gonna add the jalapeno. The tofu is on top, so we have to add whatever is at the very bottom to it. So when you put the jalapeno on, make sure that the drawing side is facing you, not the other way around. And because we don't want to smash the cucumber, you want to fold it when the whole bread is smashed instead of just like killing the cucumber, because the cucumber is responsible for a lot of movement. Now we add the tofu. We tape it to one side of bread and tape the other side to the cucumber. Once again, don't smash it, open, close the entire bread. And you see how just now the jalapeno is moving behind the tofu. And now we're gonna add the radish and the carrots on top of so first you need to wrap the carrots around the radish and make sure they have two arms holding it. And then you glue those two little arms to one side of the bread and press it really hard. And after folding it, glue the other side to the other side of the bread. The reason why I did not label the gluing part is depending on where you place the first two arms, it could be so different. That's why it's better for people to just get the position after placing the first two glue spots for the radish and the carrots. Okay, so you see how the jalapeno is coming out and the radish is rotating. So we're almost to the end. We're gonna add the inside to one side of the bread. And after we close it, we are going to add the other side of the spiral to the other side of the bread. Now you can do whatever you want with these cilantros. You can add them to the bread because the left side of the bread is a little bit sad, but you can also add them on top of the spiral, the tofu, wherever you want. And if you had Vietnamese sandwich, you know how explosive the breads are and they actually have ingredients coming out. So traditionally, if you make pop-up book, the trick is to not let anything come out, but for this particular food, you can let them come out a little bit. So I hope you have fun at the gallery. This is actually an ongoing project. I'm trying to explore even more food by just accepting suggestions from my friends. So I also made the tofu jjigae, tofu soup, and a taco. So when we're at a Q&A session, I'm excited to hear your favorite food and what you want to pop up. That's it.
Thank you so much, Sherry. Does anybody else have questions specifically for her, or we can save it to the end of the discussion? Yeah, we've had a number of people coming into the gallery they come to see the show first, and then they're like, oh, I've got to come back in order to make to make the sandwich. So then they come back, and then they'll spend some time with making it.
We have a question. We have a question here.
Yeah.
Why does she focus on food specifically for Sherry?
Yeah, okay, I can answer that question because recently, in the society in general, and especially in academia, that we talk a lot about diversity, inclusion, equity, but I join those conversations very often, but people use so many words that generalize our stories that it doesn't fit into any particular individual at all anymore. And sometimes those conversations got so heated that a lot of people felt uncomfortable and left the room. I think by bringing something that people can feel connected to, either because they grew up with the food or they have some attachment to the food. For me, for example, banh mi is a very unique Vietnamese dishes that indicates the French colonization in the past century, because the baguette they use. But at the same time, for me, it's a very sweet story that my grad school that I really like always order that food for us. So it's something that we can open up about very different experiences that in the end leads to the conversation of diversity, but it's more personal, it's more individual. Yeah, that's my answer.
We have one more question.
Yeah.
What has inspired you to create a pop-up book?
So what's the inspiration for you as the artist to make the pop-up format to use to convey your ideas?
Yeah, that's a very good question too. So first of all, I grew up in a family where nobody initially supported me making art or design. They didn't know what graphic design indicates. So for me, I was also very scared because I didn't grow up doing it. But in East Asia, if you have noticed in anime or drama that we have these ideas of like folding garbage boxes for fish bones with used newspaper. So for me, it's something I can relate to just by the way I was brought up, that I don't feel too intimidated by. If you just send me to traditional drawing and painting, I'm gonna freak out right away. But also the other reason is like, it's paper. Paper is something accessible to people. You don't have to spend a lot of money on, and like you probably get enough junk mail to make 10 pop-up books at least in your mailbox every month. And that's so good for people who didn't know that they can become artists. So that's why.
Thank you for that answer. It's form and content.
Pop-up politicians.
You're muted.
Thank you.
Right.
Thank you so much, Sherry. I think maybe we should move on and we can hear from the other artists, and then we can open it up to questions at the end of the talk.
Thank you, Amy, and thank you, everyone, and thank you, Sherry. It's very good to know your process. I cannot wait to do it on my own time. Okay, let me go ahead and share my own screen. Hello, everyone. It's a great pleasure to be here and to be part of this group exhibition interaction. So on the screen, it shows my work in this exhibition. And my name is Qiuwen Li. Right now I'm teaching graphic design at Santa Clara University. So for today, I want to talk about 3 pieces of work, and 2 of them is included in this exhibition, and 1 is the work I did in the past, but I do think it fit with today's theme, interaction. So a little bit of information about who I am as an artist. So I grew up in China, the south part of China. The province is called Hunan. So in 2010, I decided I want to study abroad in the United States. So now thinking back, is really a journey that I have already and could continue to bring a distinct perspective for my thinking, for my being, and also making. So after 6 years of education in Minnesota, I taught graphic design at University of South Dakota in Vermillion. And now I'm teaching graphic design at Santa Clara University in the Bay Area. So as an artist, I want to engage viewers in a way that invokes playing games and figure out puzzles. So it might take them a while, maybe it might take them a long time to figure out how everything works and how the system works and how to working with the games I created. But I think all the times actually makes them more engaging with the process and make the experience become more memorable. So the first piece I want to talk about is called randomness. So I create all these QR codes, and you can see this piece in the gallery space. So the QR codes designed by me link to my random poetry haiku generator. So haiku, if you don't know, is a very short form of Japanese poetry. The essence of haiku is cutting. So it's often represented by the juxtaposition of 2 images or ideas and the cutting word between them. So among all the QR codes, there are 3 different types. The first one is the one on the left. It looks like a QR code in our daily life and also functioning as a QR code. So it's scannable. It will link to my random haiku generator. The second type is the one on the center. It's more like iconic QR code, looks like image. In this case, you can see the horse on the center. It's also scannable. It will link to the haiku generator as well. A third one is the one on the right. It looks like image. In this case, is geometric pattern, but it's not scannable. So if you scan it, it will not link you to anything. So the reason behind why I use different types of the QR codes, because I want to explore the relationship between text and image. So this is what the random haiku looks like. So here I'm using 3 columns layout, and they're all the same poem, but just using different typeface. I create the typeface on the left column. Is named randomness font and is illegible. The one on the center is legible, is easy to read. The one on the right is a mix of both. So I want to explore the relationship between legibility and illegibility here. So the idea and the purpose for the project is letting the viewers pick up one random poem and understand in their own way to create their own story. So as a designer, I want to expose the essence of communication. I want to provide avenue that we do not take very often, but do find similarities. For example, the idea of randomness can very easily find in our daily life, in the nature, as well as the history of poetry. Also, this work is inspired by many artists, designers, for example, John K. Chan's operation, my friends' experience, and myself experience as well. So the next piece is not showing in the gallery. It's a work I did in the past. It's called calligraphy. It's a made-up word. I combine 2 words, color with typography. You can see this piece. I use different mediums here. I think a good introduction for the piece can come from a quote. This is LA-based designer, and his name is Joshua Berger. Once he said, language is anything that communicates information. I totally agree with it. And when we think about the language, most of the time we think it's going to be text. But text can be image, can be letters, can be sound, but also can be color as well. So if you think about color is really a universal language that is very approachable. It across a lot of generations, so kids and also adults understanding. So this is what the color graphic looks like. So it's a colored mapping language system that functioning by encode each letters with different colors and connecting the same color letters by using lines. So in order to understand the text behind it, viewer will need to decode this system through the color data I gave to them. You can see there's different size. The large one indicates the capital letters and small one indicates lowercase letters. The circle indicates the punctuations. The text I use here is come from Charles Darwin's on the book on the origin of species. So I also use different medium. So this is designed specific for kids for them to learn color theory, for example, complementary color in the same family hues. I also made a website for this piece, so people able to interact with it. So let's say if they put their mouse cursor on one of the square, they're able to see the letter behind it. And also the background is constantly changing, so they can see, the interaction, the color, what the color looks like when different color background happens. So this is a video I recorded to show how the audience interact with my piece. So the way how they interacted, they read the article from top to bottom, left to right, the way we read the articles. Before they need to read the rules, the instructions, basically they need to follow in one of the rules. They can connecting rectangular by sharing the same color, by using the same color pencil, all the colors that are in complementary colors by using one of the color. The third rule is they can share connecting the rectangulars share the same hue or same color family by using one of the color pencil. So this is what that piece looks like. The last piece I want to talk about today is called Old is the New. So this is a series of poster design. Original is designed for online book event, which build a huge virtual library. So people can get in and easily find books they are looking for. So as a designer, I use very bright colors and geometric shapes to indicate the power of knowledge. So I also add the AR experience to it. I'm using the free app. It's called Artivibe. It's very beginner friendly. I introduced it to my class as well, so you can try it as well. So when you download it, you can see the text interact with the image. So the text comes from an educator, and her name is Jen Baskerville, and I think these codes fits very well with the idea of my posters design. So it's more like open book, it's more like you can able to find people and place of every kind, and you can be anything that you want to be. So I break these code into 3 sections, and each section I used for different posters. Before ending my presentation, I also want to talk a little bit about Emotion Lab. Besides the studio practice, I also very interested in data-driven research. So I co-founded this research lab. It's called Emotion Lab. We really interested in specific positive emotions and how people portray it differently on social media, for example, Instagram. So if you're interested in it, you can read more about it on our websites. Thank you, everyone. So this is my website and contact information. Let's see if there's any question.
Thank you so much. Do we have any direct questions?
Yes.
Oh, so there were 3 different QR codes.
Mhm.
How does she decide which one to use in the art?
I create equally amount of QR codes, and for the one that is geometrical one, is not scannable. And for the one that is on the middle, in the example I showed, there's a horse. So for the like random haiku poem, there's going to be something, you know, related with a horse. So horse, like what's the in the history of poetry? So poets just have random words. So they need to come up with a poem based on the words I have. Let's say if the if the haiku poem has a word horse on it, then I will indicate that on the iconic QR codes. So I will have the horse on the center. So in this way, it will give the people a little bit clue, but it's not going to show them the full picture.
I'll have to go back now and scroll through that piece to see.
It's a pixel art on the center. Sometimes it is very recognizable, but sometimes it's a little bit abstract. Yeah.
Any other questions? All right, then I think we'll move on to Dan, and then we can open up to questions at the very end.
All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Dan Heskamp, and I use they, them pronouns. Let me share my screen so that I can start my PowerPoint. All right. Can everybody see that?
Yes.
Yes.
Excellent. Okay, so again, my name is Dan Heskamp. I like to start off all my artist lectures in the traditional manner of showing my pet Odin, the one-eyed pug. But a little bit about my background. So I'm an instructor at College of the Sequoias, and I'm also a lecturer at California State University, Stanislaus. I grew up in Illinois, so in a place much, much cooler than the Central Valley, California. And to kind of bridge a little bit of my background into the work that I'm making right now is that I grew up in a very traditional Irish Roman Catholic family. I went to Catholic school for pretty much all of grade school. So a lot of like, you know, I was an indoor kid when I was a kid. I spent a lot of time drawing, reading, playing video games, things like that. I didn't go out and interact with the world too much. But I was sort of forced to through school and then also going to church for my community. So that kind of gets pulled into my artwork a little bit. I want to talk a little bit too about like my inspiration for some of the early works, thinking about how we frame devices, the shape of our artwork. A lot of my work involves animals and animal remains and the way that we treat them. And so I was trying to kind of break through the normal putting a picture into a frame, putting a rectangle picture into a rectangle frame and trying to come up with some interesting devices for it. So I was looking at the way that we traditionally stretch animal hide and then using that in my own artwork and, you know, printing images onto canvas and then stretching that canvas in a way that kind of reflects the way that we treat or what we do with our animals. So this is an early piece of mine that was a woodcut, and I continued to do printmaking and woodcuts in different ways. This is a much later piece, which was kind of a further rendition of it. And I was pulling back on that early Catholic upbringing, thinking about stained glass windows. And so this was a black and white woodcut that I created a light box for to put behind the print so that it gets illuminated from behind. So this kind of shows you a little bit about where my early work comes from, thinking more about kind of like animal rights, hunting culture being from the Midwest was really strong, the overpopulation of animals and the overhunting of animals as well. And this kind of brings me into some of my early work dealing with interaction. So for my thesis show when I was in graduate school, I set up these little reliquary stations that I built. And then I asked the audience to come in and they could leave tributes. I've got another shot here showing kind of a close-up. So people would bring flowers. I also had candles that people could light. It was in a gallery space, which we weren't allowed to have open flames. So they're actually electronic candles. You like flip a little switch on the bottom to turn them on. And I was also thinking about community too. I was in an area that had a really large stray animal population. So what I was doing was I was setting this up and then asking for donations, and it would say, you know, like, please donate $1, and then you can light a candle at a station. And then all of the donation proceeds would then get donated to a local no-kill animal shelter. So I was trying to kind of help solve the problem while also making people aware of the problem at the same time. And that was kind of one of my earliest versions of interaction being involved in the artwork. There's another one here. A lot of people like wrote notes or left little kind of tributes to those different stations on there. Flowers, wine, little toys and things like that were pretty common things. I also wanted to talk a little about, after graduate school, I transitioned into teaching. So I moved out to California. I started teaching out here. And I really try to push this idea of working in our sketchbooks as often as possible. So here's a little close-up of one of my illustrations that I did in my sketchbook. Again, thinking about animals and what we do with their remains. I also, because I moved across the country again, I was trying to get to know my environments a little bit more. So I was taking clippings from my backyard, drawing different plants, and also doing kind of like a before and after image of the plant right when I took the clipping, and then about 2 weeks later, once the plant starts to decay a little bit. So this is an illustration of both the before and after pictures of that plant. And then I did a whole series of them for Inktober, so one every day for the month of October. So I got this huge amount of drawings done, and then I was kind of thinking about what to do with it. So I kind of combined them into a little zine or a little booklet that I could give to people. I could sell at different art events and things like that. But it was a way that I could get more people to interact with the artwork just by, you know, flipping through a book and seeing all the different illustrations. I was also thinking about color because I teach color and design. I had been working a lot in black and white, and I wanted to incorporate more color into my artwork. I also had been working as a screen printer beforehand. So I was taking those illustrations. I was using a computer to digitally add different layers to them, and then manually printing them using screen printing techniques to add color to those designs. But I wasn't really sure. It's kind of, you know, starting off just thinking about color theory, the things that I was teaching in class, but not getting too involved in the content of the colors choices that I was using. I was also working black and white. I enjoyed doing all the digital layering. So I started taking those illustrations and then creating different patterns with them. So here I've got one of my illustrations that I had made that was blown up to a large scale. And then I did patterning behind it to create a little bit more of an interesting background for the piece. And then here's that other secondary piece too, as the decayed matter with that digital patterning in the background. During COVID, I kind of did some self-reflection and discovered that I was a non-binary person. So again, using those they, them pronouns. And I always kind of think about any kind of big moment or big realization in my life, how I can incorporate those things into my artwork. So during COVID, I was very, very busy with trying to create demo videos, teaching online and things like that. So I was trying to incorporate, like, how can I put these ideas and new ideas into my artwork, but then still have them as little demos for the classes that I was doing. So I started incorporating the non-binary colors, those complementary colors of yellows and purples or violets into my artwork as well. This is another piece that I did mixing lithography and screen printing together. This kind of remained as a black and white digital mock-up for probably 2 years before I finally settled on a color scheme that I was kind of happy and proud of. And again, this kind of comes from the bisexual flag colors. So thinking about gender, identity, sexuality, and then moving those color schemes into the artwork that I'm doing. But I was also kind of thinking about how, like, oftentimes I find that those big discoveries in my life, they have already kind of incorporated themselves into my artwork without me even realizing it. Focusing a lot of my artwork on animals, animal remains, on plant matter and insects, all of those things, although they do have genders that are kind of connotated to them, a normal person or you wouldn't necessarily put a gender to those things. So I was kind of thinking about how that was kind of already coming into my work before I was even trying to incorporate it into the work. I also took a workshop using augmented reality. So I was thinking more about, like I had such limited time to create my project. So I didn't necessarily have access to a wood shop to build intricate frames or things like that. But how can I get more people to interact with the artwork? So I took a workshop dealing with augmented and virtual reality. And I was already working with Adobe programs. So I started messing with Adobe Aero, which is, it's in beta right now, but it's a way to transfer different layers that you could do in Photoshop or Illustrator. And then you can pull those layers apart and then manipulate them in different ways. Initially, I was thinking again about like, oh, this would be a great way to show my screen printing class how we separate layers to print these flat images and to create more three-dimensional with them. So it's a way for people to kind of interact that way. So I'll kind of scroll through these pretty quickly, but these are the pieces that I have created most recently over summer using a mixture of lithography and screen printing. And again, that digital patterning, different color combinations, again, coming from like LGBTQ plus themes from there. More of those kind of screen printed layers. This series in particular were stations. I called them my station series. And these are kind of based on the stations of the cross, the different layers. So like this one would be number 1. It just has the one shape right on top. And then this one's station 2 with those 2 pieces underneath. This was station 6. I started running out of time to create all 14 of them before I was having a show. So I kind of just put the ones that I liked the best together. Again, these were mostly digital mock-ups using those handmade illustrations and then screen printed manually from there. And then I do have a quick video showing that AR using my phone. So this was just like a screen capture recording. So you can kind of see the way that it works in your phone. And one of the nice things about it is that having that augmented reality allowed me to include separate layers that weren't necessarily in the print itself. So I started to kind of hide text behind those layers that could only be viewed in that augmented reality. And so here's another piece that I had made for those stations. And then again, another video kind of showing the separate layers that I kind of hid behind everything. Okay, and then this was kind of a misprint. So I accidentally, I printed one layer on one piece and then put it aside and forgot to go back to it. And so then I printed a new one on top of it and kind of combined some of my other prints together. So sometimes embracing those mistakes can create some interesting designs and patterns. I also was taking some of my older prints and cutting them up or dissecting them. In this case, I kind of created a little flag book using those. So again, thinking about how people will interact with the artwork, letting people pick up a book and kind of play around with the different pages in it. Here's a close-up of the embossment on the back side. I was also dissecting some of my other larger prints and then putting them back together within those picture frames. So I got the idea when I was making that flag book that some of them would kind of look interesting, kind of rearranged or put back together. And then I've got one more quick video because I did decide to do an augmented reality version of that piece as well. So here, if you look at the QR code, it'll actually re-piece or put the piece back together again when you view it through that augmented reality. So you can see the different layers as it's put back together as opposed to the dissected version. So I always like to end my lectures because I am an instructor at College of the Sequoias, and most of our audience today is a student at College of the Sequoias. So oftentimes I get questions about courses. So I put the courses that I'm teaching next semester. So I'm teaching a color and design class online, and then also an introduction to digital art, which I'll be kind of incorporating a lot of these themes that I talked about today into. And then I have some other recommendations. Those are just some classes that I generally recommend to students or that I really enjoy. It's not very common for community colleges to have gallery exhibition classes or printmaking classes. So those are all the ones that I'm really excited about, especially down at the bottom of the list. There's that beginning stone and plate lithography, which we haven't really had during COVID. So I'm really excited that that one's going to be back. I highly encourage students to take some more art classes. And also these are just the ones that I kind of pulled up as immediate recommendations, but there's a lot more on there too. So lastly, I just put a little image of the piece that I'm currently working on. Again, another little demo for one of my classes, but part of my station series. And then a little, thank you, my contact information in case anybody wants to look at my website, or if you've got a question and you're too shy to ask me right now. I know I'm a really shy person too, so sometimes I like to do that personal one-on-one later on. And then you can also follow me on Instagram if you care. But I'll stop sharing my screen now, and I'll open everything up for questions.
All right, do we have questions from any of the classes?
We have a question.
You can ask him.
Okay. The QR code that you scan on the phone, how do you get Arrow to run? Is that a runtime that Adobe provides, or?
Yeah, there's an option in Adobe Arrow that says, I think it says share, and you'll click the share button and it'll generate a QR code for you that you can include alongside the artwork. So it gives you it digitally that you can then print it out, you can email it, you can send it, share it any way that you wish.
Thank you.
Mhm.
I have another follow-up question, but I'll wait till everybody's done their presentation.
Do you want to go ahead and ask it?
Oh, I guess we've gotten through everybody. Okay, good. All right. I wanted to ask Dan. I know Dan is a very capable photographer. But why did you feel that drawing the plant form was the most appropriate for your art expression? Like, especially like you did so many of those plants that were just right around your environment. You think they were kind of in your backyard or whatnot.
Yeah.
And you did that Inktober deal with all of the different plant forms. And I thought, some of the plants we kind of just passed by and we're not really that interested in, but you somehow were able to generate that interest.
Yeah, I think for me, like taking it beyond the photography aspect for it, for one, I was really bad at drawing with pen and ink. So it was a way for me to practice it and to force myself to practice it and do it all the time so that I would feel more capable about it, especially when I'm teaching things like that. So it was really good for me to kind of practice it. But also, like you were saying, that we see those plants every day and we just kind of pass them by and they're just kind of become background for us. So whenever I go to a new place, I notice the new plants and foliage around me, and they're so different from where I was before. So it's kind of an interesting way for me to kind of get to know my new environment. I also think about, what's the difference between a drawing and a photograph? Well, with a drawing, you kind of get to know it a little bit better because you have to really sit there and study it in order to draw it accurately. So you kind of figure things out about the anatomy that you might not have known from just taking a quick photo and posting it on Instagram or something like that. So hopefully that answers your question.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, those are great drawings. They remind me of books from the 1800s where those botanists would go and, before they had cameras, they would go out in the field and draw this stuff.
Yeah,
Very
absolutely.
detailed, very, very great artists too.
Yeah, I'm a nerd for that old history of drawing and illustration and printmaking and things like that too.
Thank you.
Now, a question that I have, like in thinking about interaction, what I find exciting about the show is that it features older interactive technology. When we think about artist books, hands-on making, we also there's a 3D photographs, there's printmaking, then there's digital output, and then now there's the augmented reality. Like each of you are all working slightly different, but can each of you just share a little bit about how interaction, that relationship between the viewer or the guest coming to the gallery space, like how that interactive quality with your work is really essential, or not quite sure if where I'm going with it, but like, there's a different level of participation that's required for each of your pieces. Sort of what led you to that, like needing to have that be a part of your studio practice? And anybody can start if you want.
I'll jump in really quick and just say that I was coming from it from a standpoint of teaching. So it was, this is a really good tool for teaching screen printing different layers on things. But I was also, coming from that Catholic upbringing and the participatory aspect of being in church, and also the Stations of the Cross, where you kind of go up to each station one at a time and venerate before it. So I was kind of thinking like, well, how do people interact today? Everybody's on their cell phones. So maybe using a cell phone is a good way to get somebody to interact with it on a more personal level.
So I am the opposite. The reason is the same. So everyone's on their phone. So it's time to put down the phone and pick up scissors and enjoy a paper. That's my reason.
I think there's pros and cons for different mediums, and everyone's approach is different. And for me, I think the new medium able let me to see the audience like response and in the physical space, but also sometimes it helps us generate data as well. For example, we're able to see how many people view our work, and they can see the physical piece in front, but also they can experience the digital experience as well. Yeah. So bring their own perspective and add a new layers to my piece.
Any last comments or questions for the artists? Well, for those that are in the studio classrooms, if you haven't seen the show yet, it is available until November 25th. The Thanksgiving week, the gallery will be open by appointment. So from the Tuesday, even though we do have regular classes that day, if anybody needs to make it or wants to make an appointment, Matthew and I are around over the holidays too. So if you're wanting to check out the work or bring in family or friends, just feel free to send me an email and we can try and accommodate you as much as we can. I'd like to thank each of our artists for sharing about their work, sort of like a flash artist talk. And really appreciate the experience of the work. We really haven't quite had a show like this in our gallery, and I think it's very relevant to our time today. So thank you. And there will be a recording of this artist talk that'll be available that for our faculty, they can upload it into their online classes or into their Canvas modules if you're using it. And maybe do extra credit opportunities if you're a teacher for your students. But thank you all for joining us today.
All right.